Languages are full of words, tens of thousands of words per language. There are words to describe all sorts of things in all sorts of situations and cultures. If you're learning a foreign language, how are you supposed to learn all those words? There are so many of them. And no matter how much you study them, they don't seem to stick. You forget them the next day or hear them and think, dang it, why can't I remember what that means? That's the problem I'm going to address and talk about today in this video. If you've struggled to learn words in a foreign language, stick around. You may find this interesting. Let's start by talking about how humans acquire vocabulary. How do we learn words? As a baby, you noticed that there was a specific combination of sounds that frequently occurred together, and that group of sounds usually happened at the same time as a specific thing or feeling. And so you started to guess what it meant. It took a good amount of guessing. You were often wrong about exactly what those sounds meant, and so you'd update your guess and your mental model over hundreds and eventually thousands of experiences with that word. And you learned the word. And eventually you learned how that word was spelled, and someone explicitly told you that it was a word, but you basically already knew what it meant. And this is the process that you went through with every single word. You realized that the word existed, you made guesses on the meanings and uses, sometimes they were educated guesses and sometimes not, and you updated, tweaked, and verified your guesses until you were always correct, and thus you knew the word. This is the process that you used as a baby, and this is the same process that you can use as an adult to learn words in a foreign language. But many people struggle with this process as an adult. There are a few reasons for that. First, adults don't like to be wrong or not know what's going on. Second, adults have a native language that's getting in the way. And lastly, adults usually haven't done this process in a very long time. Let's look at how you can make this process easier, more straightforward, and less frustrating so that you can start doing it again as an adult. One of the most popular tools for learning vocabulary is an SRS, or Spaced Repetition System. A spaced repetition system is a tool that shows you information over and over again, but with more and more time between each review. You're tested on your ability to actively remember things, and doing that strengthens the memory. Many systems use spaced repetition nowadays, but the one that I'm talking about today specifically is Anki. I'm going to be referring to it throughout the video, but you can replace its name with essentially any other similar tool that is there to serve as the step one in that process of learning new words. The reason Anki is so popular is because it is just the framework. It is just the spaced repetition, and you actually have to fill it with things to learn. Anki is sort of like an Instant Pot or pressure cooker in your kitchen. It's a very specific, fairly niche tool that allows you to do a lot more in the kitchen than you could before. But you still need to get ingredients, choose what you're gonna cook, and find a recipe, and then use it yourself. And just like if you Google great Instant Pot recipes, you'll find a ton of suggestions. Anki also has a lot of prepared things for you to go learn. When you start learning, you set a number of cards per day, in our case, the number of new words per day. Then you'll study those words, and that's really it. But Anki builds on itself and continues each day. The next day, you'll be presented with some more new cards as well as your reviews from day one. And then after a few days, Anki starts to know which cards you know and which cards you don't really. The ones you have trouble with come up more often, but the easy cards will be shown less and further in the future. This is because the program is trying to show you each card right before you forget it. And this is the key of why it's important to do Anki daily. The program does its best to estimate when you'll forget a card and show you it just before that happens, since that's when the strongest memory gains happen. And this is why you shouldn't just jam 100 new words per day and skip reviewing things. You're not using the program as it's meant to be used, which means it'll break. Anki is meant to be used over a long period of time, slowly adding more words per day and reviewing past ones. We recommend starting with 10 new words per day. On day one, that might seem like too few, but after a couple weeks, it picks up the pace and you realize that it's pretty reasonable. This all may seem a little complicated, but as a user, you just have to show up every day, tell the program what you know and what's hard, and it'll do all the complicated math and planning for you. But getting Anki and downloading a good flashcard deck won't mean that you'll suddenly know all of those words. Just like how buying a fancy Instant Pot for $200 won't make you a professional chef. You actually need to learn how to use the tools and techniques together. Let's look at what Anki does and doesn't do for us as language learners. Anki is fantastic at helping us through that first step, becoming aware of a new word. It can show you lots of words and remind you of them to make sure that they're always on your mind. You can think of this as creating a dictionary entry in your mind. As you're learning a foreign language, you essentially need to make an internal dictionary. And Anki makes that first line of the dictionary. It adds the top level word and occasionally a definition or two. But a study tool like Anki can never fully fill out the entry. We'll come back to that in a moment. Anki also lets you jump right into the language. If you start learning a brand new language and know 0 words, trying to understand the language would be like trying to climb a completely vertical, flat wall. Only possible if you're Tom Cruise with suction cups for hands. Or if you're Spider-Man. But learning words provides you with handholds from day number 1. Instead of staring up at a massive wall, you can grab onto a single handhold. And as you memorize more and more words, there are more and more handholds. But they're not very sturdy handholds yet, and you occasionally can't quite reach them. Which leads me into what Anki doesn't do for you as a language learner. Memorization isn't acquiring. In that last section, I very specifically used the word memorize. Just memorizing words doesn't mean that you actually know them in the sense that you understand the subtlety and implications of that word. For example, take the words punt and kick in English. While they both essentially mean the same thing, they both have very different ideas behind them. If someone punts a ball, it sounds very different than if they kicked a ball. You can memorize what a word means, but you have to acquire a word to know how it feels. Acquisition doesn't come from study. Again, coming back to this in a moment. Not only are there many words with similar, subtly different meanings, but lots of words have lots of definitions. And learning cards through Anki will only give you a few of those meanings, and usually just one. A great example is a word like kettle. You probably know that that's what this is called. But what about kettle corn or a kettlebell? Or if you've been inside a brewery, you'll also know that this is a kettle. If you try to learn all the definitions from a word from Anki, you won't actually know what's important. Most of you probably knew the first 2 definitions I gave, and probably the third, but did you know the fourth? Probably not, because it's only important for a small subset of people. And so, learning that word as an English learner would be essentially a waste of time. Anki also creates what's called context-dependent knowledge. What frequently happens is that you're studying a card and you know that this card means this, but your brain is actually latched on to the shape of the sentence, other trigger words, the audio for the card, whatever it might be, a lot more than just the word. You know the card super well, but the word is actually still kind of weak in your mind. This means that you're not really studying the word anymore, but the card. So, with all that in mind, how do you best make use of Anki? How can you use it to effectively and efficiently learn a foreign language? Now is when I'm going to go back to the mental dictionary idea. If Anki helps us create that initial entry, you'll need to fill in the definitions another way. This is activating the knowledge. If a word is very much connected to a specific flashcard, you'll need to connect it to a bunch of real-world things. You'll need to fill out that mental dictionary entry with tons and tons of real-world examples and definitions. And the way that we do that is through time spent with the language, also known as immersion. And this is where steps 2 and 3 come in from that original framework. Anki has already given you an initial guess about what a word means, and so you'll need to find that word lots of times in the language and update your internal definition until it's correct and easy to understand that word. This is done naturally by your brain, by the way. You don't actually need to actively guess what something means and then check your work, although that's helpful. Your brain does this by trying to understand what's going on. And if you understand, then great, you're correct. But if you're confused, then maybe there's something missing. Over the course of hundreds of hours, your brain figures out these patterns and understands how words are used, which is when you've learned them. Because of this, our recommendation is to spend at least 70% of your time learning a language by immersing in that language. This means watching TV, reading books, listening to podcasts, engaging in the language. And then the other 30% or so can be spent by preparing your brain and adding more of those mental dictionary entries. But if you do too much of that, you'll fall behind in terms of filling out those entries and actually getting to know those words. As you're just starting out, it can be tough to learn new words through immersion. It feels like you're constantly forgetting them or not noticing them or not knowing enough of the words around them to figure out what they mean. And because of this, we use something called the noticing game. You can see a demo of it by clicking the link in the description. But in essence, it's when you ignore everything you don't know and just focus on those things that you do know or even simply recognize. It doesn't matter why you recognize them, just that you do. Maybe you have a mental dictionary entry, but it isn't full yet. Or maybe that word has come up 6 or 7 times in the last few minutes. The more you notice words, the more the context of that word starts to make its way into your mental dictionary entry. It also makes studying Anki way easier because you're getting time with those words. So if your study time is difficult right now, try immersing more. It'll help a lot. TLDR, studying words is good, but it's not the whole picture. You need to go and actually learn those words by spending extensive time with the language. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like and let us know your experience learning new words down in the comments. And if you know someone who's struggling to learn new words, send them this video. They might really appreciate it. I hope you found this useful, and as always, happy immersing.